2003, that was probably, well, 2009 wasn't much of a, it was a small amount of funds there, less than $100,000. It was basically just a grant, I believe, planning grant.
It was for our sets.
Yeah, for the sit, well, that's the SIDS one, that would be, yeah, it's probably one of the planning grants. But when you look at it, we give back a fair amount of grade, but we have a fair amount of staff costs. And the amount in terms of the green bar that actually, excuse me, gets, actually translated into action on the street for the folks that need it. I mean, for every dollar we maybe succeed in getting into a job or into some sort of a productive energy, we're paying out at least $1 or more for staff or for failure, in some cases maybe 2 for 1. And I just don't accept it, and I've been critical of it in the past, and that criticism isn't about you. Unfortunately, in the past when I've said that, staff take it hard and think that I'm mad at them, but I'm not, And at one time, we had about 10 or 11 people working in all these offices. We're down to now 1 or 2. But having those people in the office, those are probably the only jobs that were really created from these grant programs. And but we wind up paying for them because we don't get reimbursed for them because we don't have the success out on the street that we are told that we're going to have.
Well, doesn't part of the grant go to administration?
It does, but if you don't achieve the objectives of the grant, then they're going to disallow you those administrative costs, so you wind up paying for them. I mean, the reason why these funds, like the LRA fund was upside down to several $100,000, and why this fund has $500-some thousand now we're being told is in the red, is because we thought we were going to get paid for those kind of expenses, but when the grant doesn't achieve what it is set out to do, then you get the pleasure of returning all the money, including the money you expended for staff. And so they're basically general fund employees at that point. They're not specialized.
How about the grants that go to like Westwood CSD for their wastewater system and Spalding CSD? I mean, these are all CDBG grants, and those are successful. I mean, it's not all paid.
No, but this particular program right here has been the one, and I'm not saying you shut down all those kind of grants. I mean,
It sounded like you were against any CDBG grant.
No. I just, these kind of programs where we're trying to create jobs in the community and kind of, do this economic development model here has never really, I mean, in the long history of it,
But
has never really been very successful.
You can't just put a blanket, over everything. I mean, these are all individually. So there can be some that could be very successful. I guess that.
And when those can be demonstrated as such, I think we should jump on them and make them happen, but not everyone's there. And don't use the success of this grant to justify the failure for that grant over here. We need to separate that out.
Everyone is individual.
Exactly. But this area that we've worked in, off and on for years now, has never had a lustrous track record. And we need to understand it. We need to appreciate that.
Maury, you were saying that you're having trouble with the Levitt Lake application.
Right, I mean, that's not to say we failed. We have, I think, like 5 or 6 people pounding on doors right now trying to get the required qualifications done by Friday. By Friday. Well, we've been at this for
Since
2
last
weeks now.
week, yeah. We have 53 surveys needed.
And how many do you have?
Well, we needed 150, so
You need 53 more?
we need 53 more.
Now is the district itself helping you with
Oh,
that?
yes. Yep, they've done weekend surveys and evening surveys for us, and they're also out on the ground right now.
If anybody needs help with their
She
system.
actually was on the radio
Yes,
the other
she
day
was.
talking about it and trying to
Okay.
encourage people to.
Yes.
Okay.
And every time they come in and pay their bills, she's encouraging them, and,
We're hopeful,
yes.
but as that goes in,
So they don't make the timeline by Friday
Um,
with those applications?
We are going to be talking with the state of California to see if we can get an extension on the income survey results review. And if that's granted, then hopefully we will be able to have everything in by the middle of next week.
And this is not the failure of you guys. You're out
No.
stomping
No,
the
this
ground.
is-
It's the
No.
failure of the people that would benefit from getting it.
I think what it demonstrates is a challenge.
It's a challenge, and
But-
from your guys' presentation, I think people were really confused. I just think that it was so in-depth, and it is so in-depth, I think you lose a lot of people in the audience. You know, you had a few questions, but most of them are just kind of dazed and confused.
Well, I
And
think
it's not your
Supervisor
fault,
Chapman.
because that's the parameters of the program.
Correct.
But I think therein lays a little bit of your problem when you're trying to get that CDBG grant out.
I think therein lies a lot of the problem.
Yeah,
And I
you
think
do.
Supervisor Chapman outlined a story that is not getting better and is
You're right.
not likely to have a happy ending, but.
Well, that's why I was asking you, how do we fix
Let me
this?
go back to what Bob just said, and I think Bob hits the nail on the head, is that we've got, a community out there, okay, that supposedly we're trying to serve, that doesn't necessarily want that service. So I think what we need to do with these kind of grants is that we need to get those people to come to us demonstrating how they want to be served, and then based on that, we go get the grant, rather than us go get a grant and try to get them to buy into that grant. I mean, I think that's the approach we've taken over these years, is we go out and, hustle and get the grant application, and these are the things we can do, and then go look for some way to spend it, to invest it, to make it do something. And the problem is some of those folks are sitting there, with the experiences they've had in the past, don't want to deal with you or give you the kind of support and cooperation. So you can go buy the farm, but if the animals don't want to be part of the farm,
Right.
you're not going to have a farm.
Right, and this, like the CSD example is something like that. It's in the middle, I mean, Kathy came in here when we did our public hearing for people to pitch, projects, and she had a lot of people came with her.
Right.
But that doesn't mean the person on the third house down the road is gonna hunt. That dog's not gonna hunt, they don't care, and they've had a bad experience or whatever it is, and they're just not gonna participate, and it's paramount that they do.
These are like top-down programs being imposed rather than being the grassroots coming up. And that's, I think, where we lose the battle.
Well, and just to complicate it a little more, like you said, Supervisor Chapman, every year it gets more and more complicated. So this pre-qualifying business was buried in the guidelines that it's new this year. And so, every year, every month, we're experiencing different employees down in Sacramento that go, hey, it looks like we approved blah, blah, blah back in, 2001, but it wasn't right, we're gonna need that back, or you're gonna have to jump around and dance at our bullets and that kind of stuff. So we ignore that all the time.
So how about we just take the money that we would otherwise having to fund, that pot of money, whether it's LRA part or this pot, just take that money and go out to Levitt Lake and sit down with those people, and none of this grant, all this qualifying, all this stuff. Here, we got $500,000 that we're gonna be spending at some point anyway, and let's see what we can do with it, and make it a little bit more of a straightforward transaction that maybe gets them squared away, and we at least feel like, if we wind up having to eat it, at least we got something for it.
Well, what's interesting is places that have, 50,000 or more don't have to deal with the state. And that's primarily our problem, is we're not an entitlement.
We're a
thing.
pass-through community, so
So we got 37,000 with the inmates, so if we bring in 13,000 more inmates, we could be 50,000.
50,000 was-
Hey, one more prison and we don't have to deal with the
50,000 is
state.
with the city, 250 is with the county,
Oh.
yeah.
See, now
So-
you just changed the rules on us. Before it started out, you got me sucked in, and so you changed the rules.
That's why I didn't want to get too far. But the entitlement communities, the entitlement communities get direct funding from HUD, and so they, in monitoring and dealing with the regulations, are directly with the HUD agency. We, as a non-entitlement jurisdiction, apply to the state of California's CDBG program, and they make the rules.
And we all know they don't know what they're doing.
So Jenna, what kind of chances do we have to get this income survey extended?
I don't know.
Small?
We've never had to go through this process, so asking for an extension on their review of the income survey is never
And when did they need the 53 by?
Friday.
No, I mean, when was that figure, beginning of the week?
That was
last
as
week?
of this morning.
And we're banking on the next item, one of the loans is for the.
Or one of the
Yeah.
eligible projects would be, yes. And even then, even if we do get the survey results, 51% of those numbers have to be low income. So there's still another portion to their income survey that hasn't been completed yet. So,
You know, the problem is, I'll go back to it, it's irresponsible to keep on allowing business as usual to go without numbers. I mean, you know, and it's dependent on the people from the department. I mean, this is a joke, like, some of this stuff, like, I was reading through Robeson's thing. He valued the vacant land in Hurlong at $84 million. I mean, I remember still back then, he was, you know, going, geez, how much are we paying?
I saw we paid
$54,000.
$55,000, and I think
You know,
that was the worst money we ever spent
And,
as a
but
county.
what I'm saying is that, okay, the data, the flow of information is obviously improved drastically, but what I'm trying to, my point being, we're still not there, you know, with the accurate data. We're just operating like the federal government, you know, just going on. It's irresponsible. Let me just finish my point. I mean, it gets me going, because it is, it's ridiculous. The decisions that we make here, it needs to be like we're taking the money out of our own bank account, and to keep on going and going and going and going, without even ever seeing a P&L on the performance is just ridiculous. I mean,
Well, you're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman, and that's why some of us over the years have been voting no on some of this to the criticism of those. But to make your point, on page 62 of our packet here is a building valuation data, is a chart that is part of the Robeson report, where, you know, you got construction costs of what how many dollars per square foot type of a thing, and then you take those values and you apply them to, like, this dining facility, or let's take Tom's building here, where it's the sandwich place, and you apply that. Now, that was something that was built like back in the 40s or 50s by the Army, and, I mean, that would be assuming you had a structure with no depreciation, where you had basically, when we basically inherited all these buildings, they were depreciated out probably 2 or 3 times. I mean, in terms of the value, I just find that's part of the problem, is the kind of data that we work with and the mindsets that we have, and that's why you get into trouble. And you're right, there's no value there at all in terms of what those are being used.
So the report, I mean, yeah, but, I mean, me personally, what I'm in favor of is, for one, we can't really make a decision on receiving this monies when we don't even have, we might make the decision to receive it, and then meantime, pass it, vote, come to find out by Friday.
Well, we're gonna propose an alternative if it doesn't work out.
But regardless, I mean, I would only, want to support it if I knew that there needs to be a report card, you know, showing the cost and the benefits. And I'm okay with it running at a negative, but I want to see what's
really happening.
for the negative.
Maureen, what's the income ceiling on this thing at Levitt Lake?
it depends on household size, but it's the area median income, which is determined by the state. So,
What, and you don't know that figure off the top of your head?
well, for each household, it's, but I wanna say for a family of 4, it's maybe around $43,400.
Well, they should make that easy.
They should.
Hopefully. We surveyed all of the non-vacant houses, so it's just a matter of getting the surveys back.
So you've passed out the surveys and you haven't received them back, is that?
And to meet the 150 households required, so based on the population size that there's 213, we have to receive 150 surveys back for it to be a eligible income survey, and we still need 53 to meet that number.
Do you have no, I know you don't with you, but I'd like to see a copy of that survey.
Sure.
Yeah, I can get
And
one.
when did we, how long, what kind of time frame have we had known about this survey?
Not very long.
So this is just a last minute deal?
Yes.
Last 2 weeks.
Yep.
That's a problem.
Well, you know, like I said, a lot of it seems to be designed to fail from the state's from our perspective, based on what the state requires.
Okay. I think, yeah, okay.
two other things real quick. The first one is, you know, talking about all these grants and whatnot, I mean, it's kind of the same thing with the water thing that I was complaining about with the new wells and et cetera. It's just another program to suck you in, et cetera.
Agreed.
My next question for you, Maury, in this report here, you talked about the staffing issues. What's gonna happen if we move forward with this thing and that lady standing right next to you decides to take a job somewhere else? Where are we gonna be?
Always the negative.
I mean,
No,
Do you know something I don't know?
no, but I'm just saying, I mean, if we lose a crucial staff that knows all this stuff, where are we gonna be?
You know, and frankly, Jenna's talents are sought after throughout California and other places that I dare say pay better. So it's a possibility. We would do a recruitment and try to replace her. You know, from at my level, Galen's level, we don't know the programs like Jenna does. I don't know surveying like the surveyor. I don't know building like the building inspector. And I don't pretend to. But it would be a challenge. It's a significant risk that occurs with anybody in economic development that is, especially if she was underwriting and doing all that kind of stuff as well. She's a valuable asset and her loss would be considerable.
it'd be considerable now.
Well, right, exactly. I mean, even if you pulled the plug on all these programs, there's years of work to do to close out all these programs and grants and loans.
Okay, so this item recalls just to receive the report and provide direction. So,
We have two things. We have to figure out how to make what we already have work, and then the second part, we have to decide if we want to go for another round of funding. And I think maybe to move this thing along a little bit, I would say we need to focus on what we have now and get it in a more stable environment before we start looking at expanding it. And I think that's one direction I hope the board would be willing to make.
does anybody from the public want to weigh in on this item, this H8?
I want to make a couple points. One, just to pour a little rain on this parade. Some of the costs that aren't identified in Fund 112, but very real and may dwarf those costs are, when we act as a lender, which we have with the borrowers we expose ourselves to a lot of liability. And I think the board's been briefed on a couple of existing litigation issues in closed session that expose us to a lot of risk. Those risks are not covered by our insurance, and so they are 100% general fund in nature. And even if we're successful, the legal fees that we spend in defending these lawsuits are also not covered. So, and those could exceed the negative fund balance that we have fairly easily. So those need to be considered in operating these programs. You know, from a strategic standpoint, I kind of admire the federal government for you know, using us as a vehicle to perpetuate their philosophy of picking the winners and losers and redistributing wealth. And I think that probably works well in a lot of communities in California if those philosophies are similar, but they don't seem to be in ours.
Okay. Did somebody, Jean, you had a question? Or you wanted to weigh in?
Well, I just wanted to sort of ask a question in general. Our federal government, NSA, wiretapping, data gathering, Obamacare, you know, things not working out, programs not working out, not going smoothly, glitches. People maybe are not trusting, and they don't want intrusion. And I just, maybe it's just a general distrust, possibly, just wondering.
Could be, I don't know. But the programs, you know, for our participation, they do ask for a lot of information regarding income and asset information, especially when we're income qualifying, and a lot of people don't want to necessarily, confidential or not, they don't necessarily want to give up that information, so.
Well, you know, I think, Gene, makes, I think, a valid observation. I think a lot of it has to do with trust or lack of. And I think because of what they see and hear with the news and what happens at the national and state level, and I mean, it trickles down. But the dilemma or the problem we have is, okay, we try to do it, and they don't want to be a part of it because they don't trust. And I appreciate that, because I don't trust either, in many respects. But then if we don't do it, then we're taking the task because we're not trying to help the people that we were supposedly elected to serve. So it's a no-win proposition for the county. And so I don't know how you break that cycle, because at some point in time, if you're going to try to do something, you're going to have to trust the people involved to do it. So I just find it amazing that after all these years, they keep giving more regulations, the complexity there. Now they slip in these requirements, like you said, you find buried in the fine print, and that's part of the distrust. And there's a lot of stuff that was put into the fine print years ago that we're now paying for, because even though you have due diligence trying to sort all that out, and you pay staff to sort all that out, and it still isn't good enough. But you're right, I think a lot of it has to do with lack of trust, and I can see why people wouldn't want to fill out maybe a survey, because you don't know where that's going to lead.
Iona McCain here. We get, and McCain Associates, more robocalls, as I call them, and they come across, you qualify, McCain Associates of Windsor, Lansing, for a $250,000 loan, and I go, pluck,
Yeah.
and I get those at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh, 2-3 times a day sometimes.
Yeah, and days sometimes. And I just don't listen to it, so maybe we're going about it the wrong way.
Jenna, get the McCains off the list.
Well, I thought we had very nice postcards made for the housing rehab program.
I was.
I thought they were
impressed,
beautiful,
yeah,
but.
yeah, so did I, yeah. Well, I mean, that was, you guys really did do a big effort, in my opinion. I mean,
Yeah.
the radio, the postcards, the meetings. And
Yeah.
I think, when people hear grant, they associate that with kind of free.
Right.
When they hear about, all of a sudden, about what the repayments are, they sort of.
Well, if I may restate your joke, the debt-free comment, well, the guy under the bridge is debt-free. Well, the guy under the bridge doesn't want a loan either, and I don't mean to associate, but, if you don't want to take on that kind of obligation, even if it's low interest.
So, okay, if there's nothing more on this, I think we need to move on to the next item.
Are we going to take a lunch break? I'm sorry.
Well, we have this, and then there's only one more thing, so that the board wants to.
Yeah, but one more thing lasts for 2 hours. I think we need to think about it, so.
Well, how about we get to 9?
Okay.
Well, 10 and more is here. Okay, so this is grants and loans. So, this is what we've been discussing.
So we're not providing any direction on 8, we just received a report?
Right, yeah.
And then, so as you will recall, we had a public hearing, people came in and pitched some ideas, and so Jenna, that not all of them were eligible, the one that was, we're working on it as we discussed. But for the rest of the menu that you can pick from, here's Jenna.
So the public improvements is the Levitt Lake CSD. They are only going to be requesting about $500,000. We are still in the process of determining their eligibility, as we discussed on the last item. The grant application can have up to 3 activities, so the department has came up with a few options if the board chooses to move forward with the grant application. The first one is the Levitt Lake CSD as a public improvement. Continuing the business assistance and micro enterprise programs, and then a housing rehabilitation program for Westwood, which would include code enforcement activities.
Yeah, so if we were to pick the Westwood housing rehab project, we would want to amend the guidelines so that we could expend some of those resources on code enforcement.
And,
Go ahead, no, you go.
And if the Levitt Lake CSD is not eligible, we have 2 other options that the county could look at, which is, and we're determining its eligibility on this, but a master environmental assessment for North County, which would include Beaver and Madeline. It's Census Tract 401, which is the entire top portion of the county. or a neighborhood cleanup program in Westwood, which would be a public service.
And MEA, just as we may recall, we do those as a prelude to area plans, and they're basically a collection of data that's used to develop an area plan. They don't contain policies or anything like that. They're basically an assessment, a snapshot of existing land uses and facilities.
How about a little valley?
We could do a Little Valley cleanup.
Is that in the same census?
Yeah, since census tract for all,
Aaron
which is ineligible.
Aaron has taken us all there on April 22nd, and I'm sure he's providing more information.
I have been to Little Valley. We did a housing rehab program there one year. And
They have a house there.
Yes, we did.
Little valley.
Yeah, and it could be a dual program. It could be a Westwood and a Doyle, or it could be a Westwood and a Little Valley, or a Madeline, or
And I would
be
say
a
as
combination of.
well, sorry, John.
No, you're right.
If the board were to pick enterprise fund activities, business, micro, the combo, we would want to, as the CAO pointed out, look at those guidelines and review the risk assessment, as well as procedurally how the loan committee is put together and who executes loan documents. Those would be some things that we would want to review.
The same would also be done for housing rehab, because they are essentially governed by very similar guidelines. There's still loans, there's still potential to existing litigation.
So what is the time constraints on this? So we have to last second on this?
We have until April 8th to submit or April 11th to submit the application. April 8th is going to be the Board of Supervisor meeting that we will schedule the public hearing to adopt the application, if at today you choose to.
So if we don't approve it today, then it's just gone.
Then.
What if we do it on the special meeting we're gonna have a meeting on the 1st, I think.
No, the April 8th will be the public hearing to adopt the grant
The only
application.
deadline
You
right
can
now.
choose, right now, there is no deadline, it's just the deadline on staff getting the grant
Oh, there's no
application
deadline
done.
on this.
No, not yet.
Here's what
Not till April 8th.
what I'd like to see. I mean, you guys, you're the ones that has all the knowledge of what has the best chance of success. I mean, why don't you bring this back with the way you think we could best utilize the $2 million, and say, these would be my picks, you have the expertise, not us. And then another column with what the amounts administratively we receive back.
Okay.
And then also with your, a realistic goal on which the money is gonna be out there. That's something that
Can we
is
add
more
one-
meaningful.
Can we add one item to that, and also have what we would be at risk for, in terms of, I mean, you talk about the administrative monies we get back, but would we be at risk for that if we fail to achieve the grant? In other words, let's quantify what the potential dollar risk amount. So, I mean, I think you've got the plus side, which I think is there, but I think we should also appreciate the potential downside if we fail to get above us. Do the report card mode like you suggested, and if we're less than a C, then we have the risk of losing these kind of monies. So we can at least budget, what that loss would be for down the road.
So, and I know we're having a special meeting, on the
24th.
Next Monday.
So March 24th.
Yeah, going down to
24th.
the 24th. Yeah.
So, can we have that with that info for that meeting? Just on that. I think we need to get more targeted and specific than just these, with everything, and also with the numbers, with everything,
The deadline, the application is due April 11th, so the last opportunity for us to take an action would be on April 8th. And what I would have to say, and I want to say thank you to staff, appreciate, in the past, a lot of times staff would be before us on April 8th, having the kind of discussion we're having today, expecting us to react because the deadline's on the 11th. At least we have had some discussion and we can be given thought prior to that April 8th, and so maybe the April 8th can be more productive. And that's a huge step forward, I want to say thank you.
Okay. Did you have something?
I was just gonna make a request after you're done with this slide.
Oh, does anybody have anything to say, public, on this? Okay, so we're gonna, push this to the next meeting and not take any action today. Okay, come back with all right.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I might make a request about continuing, we're trying, as you know, we're trying to schedule our meeting for the 24th, so we're